It is Wednesday, September 24th, 2025, and welcome to the latest happenings inside our federal machine. An anti-ICE gunman on a rooftop opens fire on a Dallas ICE facility this morning, shooting at a bus and killing one illegal immigrant. We also have more drama regarding the Democrats pushing for a government shutdown, what they are asking for, and why it is beyond unreasonable. Republicans better hold the line and not cave. Today, the U.S. Department of Energy announced they clawed back $13 billion allocated for failed renewable energy and will be returning the funds to the U.S. Treasury. President Trump announced his full endorsement for Javier Melei, the president of Argentina, as he begins campaigning for his second term. The White House announced today that the Trump administration has eliminated millions of dollars worth of grants that were directed to DEI-driven climate change organizations. The White House installed a presidential walk of fame along the West Wing featuring framed pictures of U.S. presidents. The photograph of Joe Biden is, for lack of a better word, surprising. Dr. Ben Carson was sworn in today as the USDA National Advisor for Nutrition, Health, and Housing. Also, pharmaceutical giant Eli Lilly announced the construction of a $6.5 billion Texas facility, which will boost domestic production of pharmaceutical ingredients. And there's a lot more that happened today, so we're going to just dive right in. And if you enjoyed the video, please give the video a like and also subscribe to the channel if you have just a quick second to do so. And I might just read your comment on the next episode if you decide to drop a comment. And by the way, everything in this episode is within 24 hours news-wise. All these posts that I'm going to go over, usually I grab about 30, at the most 40 posts per episode. And usually that brings it to about an hour and a half on average. That's about how long each episode is. So, yeah, just to let you know, it's from today, everything that I'm covering in this episode. So I'm going to start right here with FBI Director Kash Patel. This morning, just before 7 a.m. local time, an individual fired multiple rounds at a Dallas, Texas ICE facility, killing one, wounding several others before taking his own life. FBI, DHS, ATF are on the ground with Dallas PD and state authorities. While the investigation is ongoing, an initial review of the evidence shows an ideological motive behind the attack. See photo below. One of the unspent shell casings recovered was engraved with the phrase anti-ICE. More updates will be forthcoming. These despicable, politically motivated attacks against law enforcement are not a one-off. We are only miles from Prairieland, Texas, where just 2 months ago, an individual ambushed a separate ICE facility targeting their officers. It has to end, and the FBI and our partners will lead these investigative efforts to see to it that those who target our law enforcement are pursued and brought to the fullest extent of justice. Thankfully, no law enforcement personnel were injured. Please pray for the injured and deceased. And there's an image of the rounds. It looks like 5 in total, of course, if my counting's correct today. And that is what was recovered with anti-ICE written right there on the 4th round. And yeah, there you have it. Of course, the left wing, the Democrats, they're pushing back. They're saying that doesn't look legitimate. There's even some people, not politicians. Well, I'm sure politicians are as well, but I've read a couple of comments just on X from quote unquote higher profile left-wingers that are not necessarily in politics. They're not elected officials, but they're saying that this is really suspicious. It looks like it was planted. How do we know this was real evidence? You know, all that conspiratorial bullshit that they're engaged in. So before I move on to Attorney General Pamela Bondi, she basically chimes on the same thing. Matter of fact, I'll just go over it now that I got it in front of me. But she says federal agents from FBI and ATF HQ are on the scene of the shooting at the Dallas ICE field office. We stand ready to assist our partners at DHS Gov. Pray for the victims of this heinous act and for our brave law enforcement officers. So before I go any further into Caroline Levitt's take with Donald J. Trump's Truth Social post, I'm going to jump over here to the New York Post right quick, and I'm going to go over what they are talking about. This was last updated at 11:53 a.m. If I'm not mistaken, the shooting broke out just before 7 a.m., and again, it was at a Dallas ICE facility. I may play this video also, but I'm going to get into this article real quick. A crazed sniper shot at least 3 immigrants. So at least 3 immigrants were shot. Not shot at, they were shot. And 2 fatally. See, I'm getting conflicting numbers. I've read from the government officials that only 1 was fatal. New York Post is saying that 2 were fatally killed. I'm leaning toward 1 was fatally killed because I believe it actually may have been Kash Patel who noted that it was just 1, even though his post was for a while ago, or it was a while ago. But anyway, let's see. As they were being led into an ICE facility to be processed early Wednesday, authorities said of the monstrous attack, the unidentified gunman fired from a rooftop as agents led into the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Office just before 7 a.m. local time, just a month after there was a bomb threat there. Homeland Security spokesman Tricia McLaughlin told Fox News. Police said that 1 died at the scene, with the gunman also found dead at a sniper's nest overlooking the carnage. Okay, so that must have been the second casualty that they're referencing. Yeah, because I read in more than one area, or more than one post, rather, that only 1 immigrant was fatally injured. So, yeah, it looked like the scumbag leftist douchebag gunman was the second fatality. And yeah, apparently, by the way, his supposedly his mother has, like, that. You know how the sleuths work on the internet. As soon as something like this happens, you get a ton of people that are digging through the internet trying to find as much info on the suspect as they can. Apparently, the suspect's mother was quite vocal on social media, screaming anti-Trump tirades. So, it's another one of these far left wingers, probably voting Democrat, of course, or at a very least, they're siding with Democrats because Democrats are left wing these days. They're extremely left wing these days. So let's see. Police said 1 died at the scene. Yeah, the gunman also died. There's an image of all the cops that showed up. And another image, 3 ICE detainees. Wait, hold on. See, according to this, it says 3 ICE detainees were killed after being shot by a sniper in Dallas on September 24th. Now I'm getting conflicting numbers yet again. So, crazed sniper critically wounds at least 3 people at Dallas ICE facility. I think that's what they actually meant to say, that 3 were wounded, 1 was killed. The gunman killed himself. So, total fatalities are 2. Total shot in total are 5. And 3 are injured right now, with 1 who was fatally shot, if I got the numbers right. But anyway, the dead did not include law enforcement, but there are other injuries with some in critical condition, McLaughlin said, calling it monstrous. The shooter opened fire while the detainees were being transferred, and the portcullis to the facility was open, Fox News reported, citing authorities. And no ICE officials were killed in the shooting. And this is what we know about the Dallas ICE facility shooting. A gunman identified as 29-year-old Joshua John opened fire on an ICE van at a detention center in Dallas, Texas in the early hours of September 24th. John began shooting while detainees were being transferred and the portcullis to the facility was open, reports claim. 1 person died and 2 were wounded, according to reports. John was found dead on a nearby rooftop from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Fucking coward. Another fucking coward. There was writing on the bullets, with 1 reading anti-ICE, according to the FBI. The shooting is being investigated, quote, as an act of targeted violence. It should be full-on terrorism, in my opinion. The special agent in charge of the FBI's Dallas field office, Joe Rothrock, said in a press conference. The shooter, identified as a white male, was found dead on the roof of a nearby immigration facility, or attorney's office, rather, on the roof of a nearby immigration attorney's office from a self-inflicted gunshot wound as agents were closing in, police sources told the outlet. It isn't clear if other shooters were involved in the attack. And is that all we got? No, we got a little left. Let's see. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem confirmed there had been multiple injuries and fatalities. Quote, while we don't know motive yet, we know that our ICE law enforcement is facing unprecedented violence against them. It must stop, she said on X. Please pray for the victims and their families. I think I actually have that post also. The obsessive attack on law enforcement, particularly ICE, must stop. I'm praying for everyone hurt in this attack and for their families, Vice President J.D. Vance wrote on X. This is still a developing story. So that's the end of the New York Post article. And, of course, they can't, as a government official, I get it, they can't come out exactly and say that they have the motive definitively pegged, but we know exactly what the motive is. They've been brainwashed by left-wing media into believing that ICE is Trump's Gestapo, Trump's Nazi forces, the fucking SS of the Trump presidency. That's what they keep saying with all this insane fucking language, just designed to just get more divisive, get more Americans angry, and start literally attacking our government officials. It is absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. I think they actually have a broader motive. I think this is just one way for the Democrats to try to take another shot at the Second Amendment, even though there is absolutely no fucking way that Republicans are going to start clamping down on gun laws and gun legislation, no matter who the hell's firing at them. In fact, I think they would go the other direction, and they would probably encourage more people to carry arms. That way, you don't end up a target yourself, because it looks like these people, in this instance, they were aiming for ICE officers, or this gunman asshole was aiming for ICE officers, apparently, even though that there are some Democrats on the other side that are saying that, no, he was clearly aiming at immigrants because he's an extreme right-winger. So, yeah, that's kind of fucked up, because it said on the bullet, it said anti-ICE. So why would they be trying to shoot illegal immigrants if they're anti-ICE and they've got, ICE agents in their scope? That doesn't make any sense to me. All right, so anyway, we're going to go on to Caroline Levitt here. She posted Donald J. Trump's Truth Social post regarding the incident. I have been briefed on the deadly shooting at the ICE field office in Dallas, Texas. It has now been revealed the deranged shooter wrote anti-ICE on his shell casings. This is despicable. The brave men and women of ICE are just trying to do their jobs and remove the worst of the worst criminals out of our country, but they are facing an unprecedented increase in threats, violence, and attacks by deranged radical leftists. This violence is the result of radical left Democrats constantly demonizing law enforcement, calling for ICE to be demolished, and comparing ICE officers to Nazis. The continuing violence from radical left terrorists in the aftermath of Charlie Kirk's assassination must be stopped. ICE officers and other brave members of law enforcement are under grave threat. We have already declared Antifa a terrorist organization, and I will be signing an executive order this week to dismantle these domestic terrorism networks. I am calling on all Democrats to stop this rhetoric against ICE and America's law enforcement right now. The Trump administration is fully committed to backing law enforcement, strong borders, securing our homeland, deporting violent illegal criminals, and fully rooting out the left-wing domestic terrorism that is terrorizing our country. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Plus, also, what Democrats are trying to do with all this violent rhetoric is that they're trying to demoralize ICE officers to the point where they just give up and they just go home. Like, no, this job isn't worth it. Like, the entire left wing is attacking us. But just hold your ground, stay brave in the face of tyranny, which is absolutely coming from the left. Tyranny doesn't necessarily have to come from the government. I mean, it is largely coming from the government, from the Democrat side of the government, but a lot of it's coming from just these brainwashed left-wingers that are just trying to inflict terrorism, which this was terrorism. That's what it was. I know they're calling it, a violent shooting or whatever it was that they described it, but no, this is absolutely an act of terrorism, in my opinion, because the Democrats are making violence against federal agents a political issue because they keep talking about it. And anyway, so I'm going to move on to the next portion here from Senate Republicans. Powerful words from Ted Cruz following the shooting at a Dallas ICE facility. And of course, it quotes him, so I'll just go ahead and let him say it himself.
This needs to stop. Violence is wrong. Politically motivated violence is wrong. It was 2 weeks ago today that we saw a political assassination in Utah that tore the heart out of much of this country. This is the third shooting in Texas directed at ICE or CBP. This must stop. To every politician who is using rhetoric demonizing ICE and demonizing CBP, stop. To every politician demanding that ICE agents be doxxed and calling for people to go after their families, stop. This has very real consequences. Look, in America, we disagree. That's fine. That's the democratic process. But your political opponents are not Nazis.
Fuck no,
we need to learn
not.
to work together without demonizing each other, without attacking each other. And I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you To the brave men and women of law enforcement, I want to say thank you. To the brave men and women of ICE and CBP and everyone who puts their lives on the line to keep us safe. The divisive rhetoric tragically has real consequences.
Man, that might be the most non-political I might have ever heard of Ted Cruz. Like, that was legit genuine, and it needs to be, because they need to stop doing what the hell they're doing. We have to share the country together. What's going on is that the Democrats are obviously losing immense amounts of power in real time, and this is just their way of just fighting, kicking, and screaming as they just fall further and further down the leftist cliff. And it's evil. It's, I mean, in every conceivable way. I mean, there's really no other way to put it except to just, practice in like demonology, essentially, just trying to, I guess, spark another civil war. What else are they trying to do? Like, what is the end game of all this rhetoric? Like, what's the end? Because I still have yet to hear anything. What is the end game for all of this language that they're using, calling the right Nazis and all this shit? I mean, if you look at history books, they want to get to the end where they essentially isolate conservatives and they start exterminating them. And that's essentially what it looks like, because that's what they typically do in communist takeovers. They start purging their enemies and, of course, their close loyalists, who are probably going to be the far leftists and the Antifa types and all that. I mean, they're not going to be spared from extermination either, if this is the bitter end that they're looking to achieve in America, which is absolutely psychotic, nihilistic in every way imaginable. So, all right, anyway, so this is from Matt Walsh. Left-wing violence is a national emergency. We can't even go a week anymore without multiple left-wing terror attacks. The entire force of the federal government must be used to ruthlessly subdue and crush this terrorist threat. This cannot continue. We cannot live this way. And no, we can't. We absolutely can't. And it's not going to end well. I don't think it's especially going to end well for the Democrats, because the Second Amendment's not going anywhere. In fact, it's only getting more and more powerful. Here, let me check my time. Here in, 2 hours and 40 minutes, the state of Florida will officially be a wide open carry state. Statewide, if you don't have a felony or dishonorably discharged or have any kind of mental illness or domestic violence in your history, you can open carry a firearm anywhere you want without the government's permission, provided, of course, it's not at a school or a courthouse or whatever. And if you walk into a private business and they don't want you to be open and carrying in their business, they can just gently ask you to leave. And at worst, you'll be trespassed. But still, yeah, in the state of Florida, we are now a constitutional carry state through and through, because they passed a year ago concealed carry without the government's permission. You don't have to have a permit. Permitless carry, as long as it's concealed, well, even open carry is now allowed in the state of Florida, which makes it, like 38 states now, which I think allow open carry at this point. And with regard to concealed carrying handguns, we're up to 26, 27 states. The majority of the country can conceal carry handguns without the government's permission. The Second Amendment is opening up far and wide, finally, to where it was intended to be all along. They should have never fucked with it, should have never touched it. And I think our country to this day would have been a lot safer of a place than it turned out. But still, we're gaining ground on the Second Amendment. So, I mean, that's really the best thing you can do. That's what the Second Amendment's for. It's to protect yourself. So if there's a bunch of violent left-wingers that are trying to pick off random people here and there and you just don't know where they're at, what else are everyday Americans going to do? They're going to have to arm themselves and protect themselves just in case, God forbid, something were to happen. And I think that's what's going to happen, because I don't think the Democrats, they're not going to calm down this rhetoric. They're just going to keep going on and on about it. And they don't even really seem like that they're trying to cater to the normies, to the non-political types, the independents, the people who don't really have one side or the other, the ones that just go in and they vote based on what they've heard over the last couple of weeks. And there's a lot of those voters out there, and it just sounds like Democrats are not even interested in them anymore. It sounds like they're just taking the far hardcore left turn and maybe try to brainwash as many people as they can, but this ain't the way to do it. Just calling everybody Nazis, that's absolutely insane. Because everyday normal Americans who have just an ounce of common sense, they're like, what the fuck are they talking about? We don't have Nazis in our fucking government, you fucking retards. But I don't know. Anyway, the midterms are going to be very interesting. They're going to be really interesting. I wasn't expecting anytime soon to see something like a Republican supermajority. But if more of the country keeps paying attention, and they will, if all of these just Mass casualty events keep ramping up. Look, I don't know if the mainstream media, they definitely reported on it. They reported on it on the internet. Hold on, let me go back. So we've got New York Times, Homeland Security. Okay, that's .gov. NBC News, CNN, BBC, NBC News, AP News. So mainstream media, they're talking about this, ABC News, but are they putting it on their mainstream television networks? I don't know. And if they are, how are they framing it? And that would be another thing too. Are they even naming the gunman? Or are they even going to give any information on his background? I don't know. Probably not. However, again, how many people actually watch the mainstream news? I mean, what, 100,000 people? Maybe 150,000 people are watching CNN, and that's during prime time. So you're not getting the vast majority of normies even watching this stuff anymore. I mean, people are turning it off. So, but again, the left wing, they tend to control the social media platforms. They have control over Alphabet, Google. So, and they still have an immense amount of power over what everyday normal people see. So, and that's really what's truly dangerous. It's not only this violent rhetoric, but it's the power that they have behind the scenes that we sometimes, fail to notice from time to time. But all right, anyway, so this is from Secretary Kristi Noem. For months, we've been warning politicians and the media to tone down their rhetoric about ICE law enforcement before someone was killed. These horrendous killings must serve as a wake-up call to the far left that their rhetoric about ICE has consequences. They're not going to listen. This is all falling on deaf ears as far as the far left is concerned. Comparing ICE day in and day out to the Nazi Gestapo, the secret police, and slave patrols has consequences. The men and women of ICE are fathers and mothers, sons and daughters. They get up every morning to try to make our communities safer. Like everyone else, we just want to go home to our families at night. The violence and dehumanization of these men and women who are simply enforcing the law must stop. We are praying for the victims and their families. And what's even more ironic is they're still in the process of deporting or arresting and deporting the violent criminals of the illegal immigrants. They're not rounding up just the ones who simply broke federal law by sneaking into the country. They have them on a list, but they're not going after them just yet. They will be, but they're still in the process of arresting the murderers, the rapists, and all those different types of people. So chances are the person that was killed, the illegal immigrant that was killed today, probably has an extensive criminal record. And that's the real ironic thing about it, is that they're calling them the Nazi Gestapo and the secret police, even though they are getting rid of the most violent criminals that came through during the Biden administration, the ones that came from prisons all over Latin America that were emptied during the Biden administration, and they were all sent up here to the U.S., and that's why there are countless thousands and thousands of them that are being arrested right now and deported. So, all right, anyway, from Brandon Leslie, last night, Gavin Newsom said people need to push back on ICE agents because they're the result of an authoritarian government. This morning, a sniper shot up an ICE facility. Do you think this might be connected? This was on one of the late shows last night.
That's happening in the United States of America. Masked men jumping out of unmarked cars, people disappearing, no due process. No oversight, zero accountability happening in the United States of America today. People ask, well, is authoritarianism, you're being hyperbolic? Bull, we're being hyperbolic. If you're a black and brown community, it's here in this country. And so I'm deeply proud that I had the privilege of signing the nation's first bill to address the issue of masking. Also,
and ironically, he got an illegal immigrant killed this morning. He did. Blood is on his hands. Gavin Newsom is an evil motherfucker. Gavin, new scumbag, new scum.
So to require, you have simple identification, to your point. I mean, if some guy jumped out of an unmarked car in a van with a mask on, tried to grab me, I mean, by definition, you're going to push back. And so these are not just authoritarian tendencies. These are authoritarian actions by an authoritarian government. You saw what Stephen Miller said last week. This should put chills up fine. Called the Democratic Party an extremist organization, basically a terrorist organization, saying he's going after his enemies. You saw the tweet that Donald Trump sent out, Truth Social, basically telling Pam Bondi, I want these 3 people taken out. That's happening in the United States.
Didn't say taken out. Wants them investigated. Didn't say anything about taking out, this hyperbolic language. And they're only just going to continue doing the same thing day in and day out because the Democratic Party's in free fall. They are losing an immense amount of power. And I think the Charlie Kirk assassination was the catalyst, but they were already losing immense amounts of power before that even happened. But when that happened, I think that very well could have been the final nail in their coffin with regard to any possibility whatsoever of winning the midterms next year. I don't see any conceivable way how they're going to be able to convince people to vote for him, especially when they keep using this language. 78% of America are in favor of mass deportations. This is why Trump won the popular majority. He won all 7 swing states, all of them. And I don't have the maps and the data in front of me, but apparently the new voter registrations and the registrations of people moving from Democrat to Republican is lighting up blue counties into red counties in real time. Apparently that's happening as we speak. And larger amounts of the country are getting redder and redder. In fact, during the last presidential election, I don't think there was a single county of, how many counties do we have? Like 5,000 counties across the country, or 3,000 or something like that. It's in the thousands. Not one single county went bluer. Each and every single county inched closer to the red. And with everything that's happened so far this year, nothing happened that the Democrats can claim as a win. Nothing. Everything has been just absolutely detrimental against the Democratic Party, and how they handle it is by giving fucking speeches like this on late night TV, talking about how we've got an authoritarian Gestapo that's running the government now. It's fucking insane. And I don't want to say, go ahead, Gavin, keep doing what you're fucking doing. You're only going to lose more voters. I mean, I don't even want that to be the case, because they're literally getting people killed at this point. Quite literally. Now, can we prove that the gunman watched that show last night? Maybe not be able to prove it. I guess if they investigated it thoroughly enough, they might be able to tell whether that show was played on that television and that they have in their house or their apartment or whatever last night. So maybe they might be able to get to the bottom of that. I don't know. However, I mean, dude showed up and he shot at ICE agents and he ended up killing an illegal immigrant instead. So it's all in the Democrats' hands. Anyway, this is from Congressman Jeff Van Drew. ICE officers have been smeared as villains by the left, and now they're being shot at in Texas. This is what happens when you demonize the men and women who protect our country. And of course, I already went over this one with Director Kash Patel. And from Fred Wellman, I'm not a lawyer, but the head of the FBI literally tweeting pictures of unconfirmed evidence within minutes of a murder seems like the dumbest shit imaginable. There you go with the crazy rhetoric. And obviously he's not a politician. He's just some, Joe Schmo, whatever. But Joe Schmo still got 147,000 likes and 4.7 million views. So a lot of people saw this post. Of course, there was quite a bit of pushback. Yours truly said the FBI shared this image from the scene, echoed from the director of the FBI. If that isn't evidence, what the hell is? It is evidence. They found bullets, unspent rounds on the ground with, anti-ice etched right on it. It may not, they might not be able to link it directly to the shooter. I'm sure they will. I'm sure it's the same ammo that belonged to the weapon he used. This dude's just being a stupid ass. But still, it sounds like a duck, walks like a duck. Maybe because 2 minutes after Kirk's shooting, the lunatic left was pushing out that it was MAGA and not the truth of a radicalized Kirk hater with a furry boyfriend and fascist on shells. After pushing the violent rhetoric towards conservatives initially, by the way, it was out before he even posted this. Local news is a peach. Let's see. Yeah, how is this evidence unconfirmed? He's confirming it by tweeting it. And look, Kash Patel, he's trying to be the most transparent FBI director that we've ever had, and so far he's doing a hell of a stellar job. And yeah, some people, especially establishment people, would probably say he's being too transparent, because the FBI does have a long history with not talking about anything with regard to an ongoing investigation. However, he's just trying to be transparent with the American people, except for the Epstein files, I guess. Even though he did say during that hearing that he was in last week or the week before last, that the FBI already released 33,000 pages worth of Epstein files since he became director. So I guess you could take that for what it is too. I mean, maybe he's being extremely transparent with that as well. Let's see. There's a reason you're not a lawyer. All right, whatever. I believe I have another one here. So this one from Aaron Rupar. This is the fishiest shit I've ever seen. We're supposed to believe the shooter wrote anti-ice in pen on a bullet and then shot detainees, but not ICE officers? Yeah, dude, he was a bad fucking shot. He sucked at aiming, thank God. I mean, look, he still got somebody killed, and he still shot multiple people. So, it's horrendous no matter which way you look at it. Just because the dude's an illegal immigrant, I would absolutely wish nothing like that on any illegal immigrant, even the criminals, even the ones who broke several laws in the U.S., even the ones who have committed violent crimes in the U.S. Now, murder, yeah, okay, capital murder. I'm okay with capital murder, or capital punishment, or whatever the fuck you want to call it. I'm okay with that. But in this situation, no. I mean, absolutely not. The person who lost his life absolutely did not deserve to lose his life, and it was at the hands of not only the gunman, but from left-wing politicians like Gavin Newsom. So this is from Laura Loomer from 9 hours ago at 11:48 a.m. She said, I did a background check on Joshua John, the ICE shooter in Dallas, Texas. Joshua John's profile picture from his now white Facebook page, per the background check results, reveals Antifa and communist imagery. Go figure. The profile photo is of an armed communist with the hammer and sickle. The text reads, Glorious Exposition Comrade. He also has a previous conviction for selling marijuana. Let's see, proof. This was leftist political violence against ICE officers. And she tags in ICE Gov, DHS Gov, and then Trisha, Ohio. See the screenshots below. So Joshua John, I'm just taking Laura Loomer's word for it. Can I 100% definitively say that this was absolutely his profile, the shooter's profile? I can't say that. She's saying that it is. So anyway, age 29, born April of 96, Fairview, Texas, Joshua John. So, and then here, possible criminal or traffic. Wait, where was the... Okay, yeah. There it is. The hammer and sickle back there. And exposition, just communism bullshit. Let's see. And then he's got his record here for, what is it, weed? $3,500. Damn, dude. How much weed did you have? $3,500. That's a lot of money for court fees. Or court fines, I mean. So there you have it from Laura Loomer. And coming from Homeland Security, public safety should not be a partisan issue. It's an American issue. Instead of dehumanizing the men and women of ICE, sanctuary city politicians should be thanking law enforcement for protecting our communities from criminal illegal aliens. And this was uploaded about 2 hours ago.
No, I think you're absolutely correct. I know just yesterday, Ilhan Omar tweeted, abolish ICE. So we're not seeing cooperation with the left.
Not at all.
Secretary Noem, she is reaching out consistently to members of Congress on the left and on the right. I think that certainly the White House and Department of Homeland Security are looking at different legislative matters and seeing what possible solutions there are. But this has come to a head.
Well, look, man, don't Republicans control the House? They do, right? Or am I crazy? So they probably have some sort of power when it comes to punishing members of the House for this violent rhetoric, like what Ilhan Omar is doing. I know they tried to censure her, and then there were 4 Republicans who pushed back and didn't allow that to play itself out. However, you would think that with regard to this issue, that Republicans would be united enough to start censuring or doing whatever it is in their power that they can do to try to punish members of Congress from using this kind of language, even though they're going to hide behind the First Amendment, which, yeah, I guess First Amendment. However, when they are using language like this, which results in calls to action to actually start killing people, especially federal agents, I mean, look, I don't have the answers for everything. Maybe it's a Supreme Court issue. I don't know. I just would really hate to see precedent being set that would erode our First Amendment rights, especially at the hands of fucking politicians of all people, because they're the ones that are supposed to be protecting our First Amendment right and our constitutional rights, not fucking causing the erosion of it, which is fucking bullshit.
This monstrous shooting should be a wake-up call for all Americans. And whether you're on the left
it better
or
be
right,
for Americans.
Public safety is an American issue. And when we're getting members of MS-13, Tren de Aragua, known and suspected terrorists off of American streets, Gavin Newsom and these sanctuary city politicians should be thanking our law enforcement instead of calling them Nazis and likening them to the Gestapo and like Jasmine Crockett did, likening them to slave patrols. It is disturbing rhetoric, and if they don't tamp it down, I'm afraid we're going to see more assaults against our law enforcement, and God forbid, nothing further.
We will. Like I said, if you live in a state where you're allowed to carry a firearm, I would recommend carrying a firearm. That's what I would recommend doing. Carry concealed. Keep the tactical advantage. I would not recommend open carrying unless you're just, you just want to wear it loud and proud. I got no beef with that whatsoever, and it would be a wide open deterrence. If you're standing in line at somewhere, I'm not going to give a store example because I can't name stores that welcome, open carry firearms. But, if you wear it loud and proud, you might deter certain criminals from coming in and robbing the place or something like that. I don't know. All right. But anyway, from the White House, let's see. We're sort of moving on a little bit, but not really. I'm going to start moving away from the shooting itself and then moving on toward the White House here from Vice President J.D. Vance. Law and order now. It is time to stop the rhetorical assault on law enforcement from J.D. Vance. He gave his speech, I think, in
Texas,
New Hampshire today.
An ICE facility, an Immigrations and Customs
North Carolina,
facility, was opened fire upon by a violent left-wing extremist, a person who wrote anti-ICE messaging on their bullets. And there's some evidence that we have that's not yet public, but we know this person was politically motivated. They were politically motivated to go after law enforcement. They were politically motivated to go after people who are enforcing our border. And I think that is the most disgusting thing. The very people who keep us safe ought to be honored and protected and praised by Democrats and Republicans alike. It is time to stop the rhetorical assault on law enforcement.
And look, it might really start getting to the point where federal agents are just going to start using live ammo. They're not going to be using rubber bullets or fucking like tear gas and shit when it comes to these violent protesters. They might end up having to resort to that, which is exactly what the Democrats want, because then they can say, look, they really are the Nazis. They really are the Gestapo, the secret police. But still, like, you've already drowned out those words to the point where, yeah, whatever. You've been calling them that for years at this point. However, what are you going to have agents do? If they keep getting picked off one by one, something's got to give. Something's got to happen. I mean, these agents aren't just going to be sitting ducks, especially when they're already armed to the teeth as it is. So I don't know. I don't know what kind of policies might be going into place if this keeps happening over and over again. And this comes from Rapid Response 47. Of course, another quote from J.D. Vance. So I'm just going to play this out.
He didn't actually say sorry to Charlie Kirk or his family. And the reason that so many people, including
Jimmy
me, were
Kimmel,
so
by the way,
upset with what Jimmy Kimmel said is that he accused Charlie Kirk's murderer of being a MAGA or a right-wing American. It wasn't a joke. It was straight up disinformation. And I really wish Jimmy Kimmel would apologize for it. He didn't actually accuse Charlie.
That would be nice if he did apologize for it. He came very close. He got really close to apologizing last night, but he didn't quite get there. I watched the whole thing. It was like 17 minutes long. There was a part of his speech at the very end. It was like the last minute. So I don't know if Republicans just turned it off before it got to that point, or even pundits or even podcasters. I listened to quite a few people throughout the day today, and nobody brought up the fact that Jimmy Kimmel he told the audience that Erica Kirk forgave the shooter who killed her husband, and that is something that everybody should aspire to. And that doesn't excuse anything that he had said before, and it also doesn't excuse the lack of an apology that he gave. However, I just figured that was worth saying, that he actually did say that at the very end. So, and that might be probably the only thing that I actually agreed with him on as far as that monologue that he gave last night. Anyway, once again, from Vice President J.D. Vance, VP Vance renews the Trump administration's pledge to aid cities in eliminating violent crime. We'll listen to this.
We should not allow these violent criminals to take over city streets. And if the local government wants our help, if the local authorities want our help, then we are going to help them, because we stand for American safety everywhere, whether it's a big city or a small one. Thank you, young man.
Amen. And, in a roundabout way, with all this violent rhetoric coming from the Democrats, this is exactly what they want. They want the authoritarianism. They want the power. And it would just be it would be even sweeter to them if it's the Republicans who end up clamping down on authoritarianism across the country. So if Democrats get back into power again, they can wield it with all the power that it comes with.
So this is what it means. Being pro-law and order is actually not that difficult. There are some things we do.
God forbid,
some issues we address that are so complicated and so challenging, but supporting our local law enforcement is actually pretty easy. It's just a question of political willpower. Here's thing number one, very simple. If our great police officers find a violent criminal and lock them up, we ought to keep them locked up instead of letting them back on our streets with a slap on the wrist.
Now, I know a lot of stuff has happened over the last few years. normies, regular people, just everyday voters who may not lean toward one political side or the other, they can't forget the fact that Democrats, they were defund the police. They've been anti-police for, 5-6 years now, probably even longer than that. So that's something that they should also take to the ballot box. And don't forget that they've been anti-law and order for many years at this point. And then moving on to House Homeland GOP, 6 people have been charged with ambushing a police officer at an ICE facility back in July. Brave law enforcement at every level put their lives on the line daily. Any threats of violence against these brave men and women undermine our homeland security. And House Homeland GOP posted that at 6:15 this evening. And then finally wrapping up with the White House. Stand with ICE. 1,000% increase in assaults on ICE officers. And it's probably ramping up to 1,100% at this point. It just keeps going up and up. All right. So now we got a long post from President Trump with regard to the United Nations, man. I thought it was just the escalator and the teleprompter incidents that took place. But apparently when Trump was giving his speech yesterday, they had his microphone turned off. And nobody in the General Assembly could hear him. The only people who could are the ones who actually had their earbuds in. And he confirmed this by asking his wife, Melania Trump, how his speech was when he was done. And she said, I couldn't hear anything you said because they didn't have his microphone turned up for the room to hear it, which was obvious sabotage. The escalator thing, I don't know about that, but I called it. I fucking called it. The teleprompter incident was absolutely sabotage. They did that completely on purpose. I don't know who it was. We're probably never going to know who it was, but they must not realize that Trump is actually really good at giving speeches without teleprompters. I mean, he's a rock star at it. That's one of the things that he's really good at. Anyway, so it reads as follows. Let's see. Yeah, that's a little better. A real disgrace took place at the United Nations yesterday. Not one, not two, but 3 very sinister events. First, the escalator going up to the main speaking floor came to a screeching halt. It stopped on a dime. It's amazing that Melania and I didn't fall forward onto the sharp edges of these steel steps, face first. It was only that we were each holding the handrail tightly, or it would have been a disaster. It was absolutely sabotage, as noted by a days earlier post in the London Times that said UN workers joked about turning off an escalator. The people that did it should be arrested. Then, as I stood before a television crowd of millions of people all over the world and important leaders in the hall, my teleprompter didn't work. It was stone cold dark. I immediately thought to myself, wow, first the escalator event and now a bad teleprompter. What kind of place is this? I then proceeded to make a speech without a teleprompter, which kicked in about 15 minutes later. The good news is the speech has gotten fantastic reviews. Maybe they appreciated the fact that very few people could have done what I did. And third, after making the speech, I was told that the sound was completely off in the auditorium where the speech was made, that world leaders, unless they used the interpreter's earpieces, couldn't hear a thing. The first person I saw at the conclusion of the speech was Melania, who was sitting right up front. I said, "How did I do?" And she said, "I couldn't hear a word you said." That wasn't a coincidence. This was triple sabotage at the UN. They ought to be ashamed of themselves. I'm sending a copy of this letter to the Secretary General, and I demand an immediate investigation. No wonder the United Nations hasn't been able to do the job that they were put in existence to do. All security tapes at the escalator should be saved, especially the emergency stop button. The Secret Service is involved. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Absolutely wild. I cannot believe that they fucking did this. Just absolutely crazy. You know, they're just trying to sabotage any way they can. And of course, there's tons of left-wing actors, especially coming from places like Europe. I mean, it's fucking falling apart in Europe, man. You think it's bad here? Shit. All right, moving on to Senate Republican Communications Center. We're getting into the government shutdown. Clean versus filthy. Democrats are holding a government funding hostage over their partisan, unserious proposal. Republicans are ready to fund the government with a clean short-term CR. So this is the Republican CR, bipartisan support, 7-week clean extension, allows time for bipartisan appropriations process. That's it. The Democrats, they just decided to try to jam in these things, $1 trillion in demands to keep government open for just 4 weeks. They want $1 trillion for 4 weeks. repeals $50 billion in an investment for rural healthcare, which is hilarious because if you watch my episodes daily, I show time and time again how Democrats are saying that Republicans, they're skyrocketing healthcare, they're gutting healthcare, they're getting rid of our healthcare, they're absolutely demolishing Medicaid and Medicare, and it's all the Republicans' fault. But yet they're trying to repeal a $50 billion investment in rural healthcare. Can't make this shit up. It puts non-citizens back on taxpayer-funded health programs and allows able-bodied non-working adults on taxpayer-funded health programs. Because the millions of Americans that Democrats claim that are losing health care, the majority are illegal immigrants, and there is a small minority of Americans who are completely and totally able-bodied, who have been sitting on government welfare for years, and in many cases for decades, getting free health care paid for by the taxpayer, and also free SNAP benefits paid for by the taxpayer, and the same with rent, utilities, and everything else. Even their Obama phones. Everything is paid for by the taxpayer. Well, not anymore. Not because of the big, beautiful bill. If you're able-bodied and if you have children over 14 years of age in the household, you have to go back to work. You have to work at least 20 hours a week if you want to have any chance in keeping your benefits. So a lot of people who are able-bodied, they're about to lose their benefits. And Democrats are screaming about innocent Americans. They're like millions of them are losing their health care. Of course, they don't give any context because Democrats never do. They like to drop a bunch of conclusions without backing it up with anything. And this is from Speaker Mike Johnson. The problem is that Democrats only want to meet to repeat their demands that we include free health care to illegal aliens, $500 million to prop up liberal news outlets, other leftist priorities, and a massive $1.5 trillion spending hike in a simple 7-week funding bill. They are holding government funding hostage. Meanwhile, House Republicans are doing our job in restoring regular order to the appropriations process. If Democrats fail to pass our clean, nonpartisan 24-page CR to keep the government open, the American people will know where the blame lies. And, you know, like with federal agents not going to get their paychecks, the military are not going to get their paychecks, and it's all going to be the Democrats' fault because they need 60 votes in the Senate to pass the bill. And of course, we don't have 60 senators on the Republican side, which means we need, I think, 7 Democrats, which they're not going to sign on for, and they're going to close the government. And that's really how it's working. That's what it basically boils down to. And you know, after this 7-week funding bill nonsense, let's say that they come to their senses and they actually sign it. Well, you know what? Even if Republicans caved to them and gave them that $1.5 trillion, which would be utter insanity, though I wouldn't be surprised because they are Republicans at the end of the day. But if they were to give into it, do you really think that Democrats aren't going to try to jam through just even worse shit in 7 weeks when the next spending bill comes up? You know they're going to. Regardless, even if they give in to the Republican demands and then they open the government back up, they're still going to be asking for the same thing in 7 weeks, and they're just going to close the government down in another 7 weeks. So, I mean, hopefully your weekly, biweekly, whatever paychecks are not in jeopardy if you're working for the federal government. I just have a feeling that this government shutdown not only is going to happen, but it's probably going to last over 7 weeks because they've got the next year's spending bill coming up in 7 weeks, apparently. I don't know the details on that. I'm just kind of just watching everything as it plays out in real time. So I guess we'll see what happens with that in the coming weeks. But yeah, the government shutdown is supposed to start on October 1st if they don't come to a deal, and it doesn't sound like they're going to because they are Democrats. Anyway, so he was replying to Craig Kaplan. Jeffries in U.S. Capitol today during recess, 6 days before government funding deadline, says Democrats are ready to meet with anyone, anytime, anyplace in order to avoid a painful Republican-caused government shutdown. Yeah, you see the stupid games that they're playing? And the reason why they're saying it's the Republicans' fault is because the Republicans, they control the House, they control the Senate, and they have the Oval Office. However, you know, everyday normies may not realize that you have to have 60 votes in the Senate. We don't have a direct democracy all over the place. You got to get 60 votes in the Senate in order to pass the spending bill, and we don't have 60 Republicans. So those 7 Democrats that are refusing to play ball, well, all of them are really, because not a single one is willing to go with this CR bill. So it isn't Republicans. In fact, it is Democrats who are forcing the government shutdown. It's just the stupid, dirty games they play. Nothing new. It's just playing politics. It's really fucking frustrating politics. All right, so this is from, I don't even know, Rep. Vet Clark. Yvette Clark, what the hell are you doing with this? This is so stupid. Anyway, so she says, let's do some math. Trump needs Democratic votes to fund the government. Plus, Trump refuses to negotiate with Democratic leaders to get those votes, equals a Trump shutdown. And replying to Trump after reviewing the details of the unserious and ridiculous demands being made by the minority radical left Democrats in return for their votes to keep our thriving country open, I have decided that no meeting with their congressional leaders could possibly be productive, which they wouldn't. It would not be productive at all. But anyway, I think I did leave a comment on this, doing a little bit of math on my own. Let's do some math. The American people need 7 Democrat votes so the military can get their paychecks. The American people have 0 Democrat votes. 0 Democrat votes equals government shutdown. So let's see. This is with regard to, okay, so this has to do with the government closure, or what the Democrats are demanding in order to keep the government open. So I'll go ahead and read it. I know it's really small. I tried to find a better version of this that wasn't so wide. I don't know why they screen grabbed it like this, but they did. So this came out from Donald Trump's Truth Social today at 11:12 a.m. After reviewing the details of the unserious and ridiculous demands being made by the minority radical left Democrats in return for their votes to keep our thriving country open, I have decided that no meeting with the congressional leaders could possibly be productive. They are threatening to shut down the government of the United States unless they can have over $1 trillion in new spending to continue free health care for illegal aliens, a monumental cost, force taxpayers to fund transgender surgery for minors, have dead people on the Medicaid rolls, allow illegal alien criminals to steal billions of dollars in American taxpayer benefits, try to force our country to again open our borders to criminals and to the world, allow men to play in women's sports, and essentially create transgender operations for everybody. These radical left views and policies is what allowed me to win the presidential election, including all 7 swing states and the popular vote, in a historic landslide. There are consequences to losing elections, but based on their letter to me, the Democrats haven't figured that out yet. They're trying to eliminate the popular $50 billion rural and vulnerable hospital fund, which was passed with only Republican votes and proudly signed into law by me. The Democrats in Congress seem to have totally lost their way. They obviously have no idea what it means to put America first or to make America great again. Of course they don't. All congressional Democrats want to do is to enact radical left policies that nobody voted for: high taxes, open borders, no consequences for violent criminals, men and women's sports, taxpayer-funded transgender surgery, and much more. Few people have voted for what they represent, which would lead to the destruction of America. Instead, people voted for common sense, and that's what the Republicans and your president, Donald J. Trump, stand for. I look forward to meeting with them if they get serious about the future of our nation. We must keep the government open and legislate like true patriots rather than hold American citizens hostage, knowing that they want our now thriving country closed. I'll be happy to meet with them if they agree to the principles in this letter. They must do their job. Otherwise, it will just be another long and brutal slog through their radicalized quicksand. To the leaders of the Democratic Party, the ball is in your court. I look forward to meeting with you when you become realistic about the things that our country stands for. Do the right thing, which they won't. They're the real obstructionists. Everything that they accuse the right of, they're already guilty of doing. So if you take that to the bank and you start listening to what they're saying, you start to realize they are truly evil indeed. And let's move on to US Department of Energy unleashing American energy dominance. Energy Department returns $13 billion in unobligated wasteful spending to American taxpayers. This comes from Washington. I believe that we've got, okay, never mind. I guess it's just included here in the post. So from Washington, the U.S. Department of Energy announced today its intention to return more than $13 billion in unobligated funds initially appropriated to advance the previous administration's wasteful green new scam agenda. This announcement reflects the administration's commitment to halt wasteful spending and refocus the department to its core mission. Quote, the American people elected President Trump largely because of the last administration's reckless spending on climate policies that fed inflation and failed to provide any real benefit to the American people, U.S. Secretary of Energy Chris Wright said. Thanks to President Trump and Congress, those days are over. By returning these funds to the American taxpayer, the Trump administration is affirming its commitment to advancing more affordable, reliable, and secure American energy and being more responsible stewards of taxpayer dollars. The Working Families Tax Cut, which President Trump signed into law earlier this year, directed the Energy Department to rein in bloated federal spending and expedite the return of unobligated funds to the U.S. Treasury to support hardworking Americans. The Department of Energy is working to advance its critical mission of unleashing affordable, reliable, and secure energy for all Americans while increasing efficiency and promoting better stewardship of taxpayer dollars. There you go. And let's see. I don't know. More plutonium production in one of these, please. I'm assuming it's a nuclear power facility, maybe. Not sure. I'm instantly fascinated. It actually kind of looks like the Large Hadron Collider. But, well, maybe it is. I mean, it's in Texas. I mean, oh, okay. Yeah, I was right. It's a superconducting super collider. So, yeah, it's basically like a particle accelerator. Not sure how they might use that to produce energy. I know that it requires a shitload of energy to accelerate atoms to 99.9999% of the speed of light. But yeah, I honestly wasn't aware they even had one of these in Texas. I know the Large Hadron Collider, isn't that in Europe, Switzerland, something like that? I don't know. It's been a while since I've read up on all that. So let's get back to the next article here, the next post from Governor Newsom press office. Look at this. Meanwhile, back in reality, well, here, let me just read Trump's here real quick from the POTUS. Climate change is the greatest con job ever perpetrated on the world. If you don't get away from the green energy scam, your country is going to fail. Now, this is hilarious. So Governor Newsom's press office says, meanwhile, back in reality, California, the fourth largest economy in the world, is running on 2/3 clean energy, with 25% of all new car sales being ZEVs. Not to mention billions going back into the pockets of millions of Californians. Yeah, dude, ask your everyday Californian if they're getting money back, if their electrical bills are going down. I somehow doubt that. But anyway, if you watched my episode last night or today, you might have seen this. And I say, oh, wait, what's this? $2.2 billion solar plant in California scheduled to be turned off. And it's because of the waste of money, and it was way too expensive to operate, and they were getting virtually no return on investment. But it features 459-foot towers and thousands of computer control mirrors known as heliostats that cost $2.2 billion to build. They started building it in 2010, and now it's set to close in 2026. So it was only operational for 12 years after failing to efficiently generate solar energy. Looks like green is not working out too well in California. But anyway, I'll link that in the description if you want to check that out. That way you don't have to go back to yesterday's episode if you don't want to. So yeah, California kind of falling on their face. A lot of people, they don't like EVs anyway because of the range anxiety. Plus, it's really expensive to buy one still. And they are extremely quickly depreciating like a rock. If you bought a Tesla, 2 years ago, and if you try to sell it today and you haven't looked up as to how much it's worth, you might want to hold on to your job because you lost a shitload of money. People are not paying nearly as much for EVs as they were. Not even close. So anyway, moving on to Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Yesterday, the president and I spoke extensively with President Javier Melei and his senior team in New York. As President Trump has stated, we stand ready to do what is needed to support Argentina and the Argentine people. Under President Melei, Argentina has taken important strides towards stabilization. He has achieved impressive fiscal consolidation and a broad liberalization of prices and restrictive regulations, laying the foundation for Argentina's historic return to prosperity. Let's see, the U.S. Treasury stands ready to purchase Argentina's USD bonds and will do so as conditions warrant. We are also prepared to deliver significant standby credit via the Exchange Stabilization Fund, and we have been in active discussions with President Milei's team to do so. The Treasury is currently in negotiations with Argentine officials for a $20 billion swap line with the central bank. We are working in close coordination with the Argentine government to prevent excessive volatility. In addition, the United States stands ready to purchase secondary or primary government debt, and we are working with the Argentine government to end the tax holiday for commodity producers converting foreign exchange. Argentina has the tools to defeat speculators, including those who seek to destabilize Argentina's markets for political objectives. I have also been in touch with numerous U.S. companies who intend to make substantial foreign direct investments in Argentina, multiple sectors in the event of a positive election outcome. The Trump administration is resolute in our support for allies of the United States, and President Trump has given President Milei a rare endorsement of a foreign official, showing his confidence in his government's economic plans and the geopolitical strategic importance of the relationship between the United States and Argentina. Immediately after the election, we will start working with the Argentine government on its principal repayments. I will be watching developments closely, and the Treasury remains fully prepared to do what is necessary. Oh man, long post. Woo, gotta catch my breath, man. A lot of reading in this episode. So this is from Rapid Response 47, Donald Trump's Truth Social from yesterday, September 23rd at 12:28 p.m. So just a little over 24 hours. I guess I missed the mark a little bit, but anyway. Highly respected president of Argentina, Javier Melei, has proven to be a truly fantastic and powerful leader for the great people of Argentina, advancing on all levels at record speed. He inherited a total mess with horrible inflation caused by the previous radical left president, much like crooked Joe Biden, the worst president in the history of our nation. Yet he has brought stability back to Argentina's economy and lifted it to a new level of prominence and respect. We have had a tremendous relationship with Argentina, which has become a strong ally thanks to President Milei. I look forward to continuing working closely with him so that both of our countries can continue on their incredible paths of success. Argentina, Javier Melei is a very good friend, fighter, and winner, and has my complete and total endorsement for re-election as president. He will never let you down. So you think he's going to win now? I think maybe. I think he probably will. Now that he got President Trump's endorsement himself, which, yeah, I believe that is a pretty rare thing. Oh, yeah, dude, check this out from J.D. Vance. So J.D. Vance put this up himself, and he was replying to Chief Nerd. Look how many likes this thing got. 261,000 likes, 15 million views. And he just posted this 11 hours ago. This just was posted today at 10 o'clock in the morning. So anyway, I'm not going to play this video, but I will show this to you from Chief Nerd. Joy Reid, quote, J.D. Vance got into Yale because they were tired of just letting in white men from New York from all the elite schools. They wanted an Appalachian white. That's how that man got into Yale. I promise you. That's also affirmative action and DEI. Yeah, just racism bullshit. I don't really want to listen to all their racist rhetoric. But yeah, anyway, I just thought that was funny because, you know, yeah, if he came from Appalachia, which I don't know if the state of Ohio is exactly considered Appalachia, but all right. And still, beside the point of that, he still became vice president of the United States, and he also became a pretty powerful politician in the process. So, you know, you can call that for whatever it is. But yeah, I just thought that was absolutely hilarious that that's how he replied to that. With one of the most ridiculous looking memes out there of JD Vance. Like he tried to find like the most cringeworthy one that he could possibly find, and I think he found it. I think he did. But yeah, there's a million different fucking memes for JD Vance out there. There's a ton. He definitely, I think a lot of people would agree, he has the most memeable face of any politician we've probably ever seen. And it's weird. I don't really know why. He's just got that face, I guess. So, all right, moving on to Caroline Levitt. Trump administration axes millions in grants to several DEI-tied environmental organizations from the Daily Caller. We're going to check this out, just a little bit of it at least. Exclusive, Trump administration axes millions in grants to several DEI-tied environmental organizations. If you didn't hear me say that the first time. Let's see. So the Daily Caller News Foundation learned that the Department of the Interior canceled 79 grants to environmental organizations on Tuesday, totaling around $14 million. That's with an M, not a B. It's with an M. Under the Trump administration, the DOI has been cutting back expenses in line with President Donald Trump's March executive order directing agencies to eliminate waste and save taxpayer dollars. The DOI canceled numerous grant awards on Tuesday, with several groups that also happen to proclaim diversity, equity, and inclusion values, which Trump has regularly critiqued. The DOI canceled numerous grants to the Bird Conservancy. Good grief, why can't I say that? Grants to the Bird Conservancy of the Rockies on Tuesday, which in its 2023 to 28 strategic plan states that we are recruiting, hiring, training, and investing in staff and the organization to increase engagement, diversity, accessibility, and inclusivity across the communities we live and work. Well, I'll tell you what, Bird Conservancy of the Rockies, that word and that word just cost you millions of dollars. 1.7 million. Or no, wait, hold on. No, never mind. That's unrelated. Even though it says it's related, it's not. So, yeah. Yep, you got to drop DEI. DEI just cost y'all a pretty penny. The grants were cut as part of the DOI's efforts to cut costs and save taxpayer dollars, according to the agency. Several of the groups that were receiving the taxpayer-funded grants also happen to affirm DEI values, which Trump has worked to expel from the administration in favor of traditional meritocracy. It's exactly what we need. We need a system of merit. If you're good enough at the job, yeah, get the job. We don't care what you look like as long as you can do the fucking job. In addition to the Bird Conservancy of the Rockies, several other environmental groups tapping the taxpayer spigot publicly endorsed DEI values in recent years. The DOI is canceling millions in grants for the Institute for Applied Ecology, which outlined a DEI action plan in 2021, noting that the organization affirms that diversity makes us strong and equality is in our nature. We are passionate about inclusion across gender, race, age, religion, identity, and experience. In other words, they're discriminating based on gender, race, age, religion, identity, and experience. That's exactly what they're doing. Because what if just so happens that 50 applicants, like, look, let's say they need like 50 more people to work for them. And let's say that, let's say 55 people applied for it, but they're all white men. Do you think they would just hire them because, they got the credentials, they got the background, they're good at what they're doing? Or do you think they're just going to leave those open positions just wide open and just wait for a person of color to come along or a woman to come along, or even better, a woman person of color to come along who might even, be in a wheelchair and gender fluid, queer, has multiple identities or personality disorder, but they call it identities, multiple identities, and they have tons of experience. Yeah, that's what they're going to do. But that would be discrimination. If somebody applies for the job and they're really qualified for it and they're great, perfect track record, great credentials, great resume, they called all their past employers, absolutely stellar. They were so upset to see them go. They were the best rock star employee that they've ever had, but they're not going to hire him because he looks a certain way. That would be racist, which is exactly what the left claims that they're standing against. It's really funny. Remember how I said that they're guilty of what they're accusing the other side of doing? Anyway, the Institute for Applied Ecology centers its work on conserving native species and habitats through restoration, research, and education, according to its website. Another environmental group known as the Lomacatsi Restoration Project features a land acknowledgement on its website and is losing millions in DOI funds. Quote, we acknowledge that Lomacatsi operates programs across the ancestral lands of Aboriginal peoples who lived and live in the watersheds of the Willamette River, Rogue River, Klamath River, Umpqua River, and Pitt River in what is now called Oregon and California, the group's website states. From sagebrush hillsides and mixed conifer forests to oak woodlands and riverine systems, we offer our respect, recognition, and gratitude to the original past, present, and future inhabitants of these landscapes to whom we dedicate this work. Future inhabitants. So are they okay with me moving out there? I'm going to bring my, skinny 5'10" ass up there. Yeah, I'm going to barge on in, move on in, buy up some land. Even though I'm not an Aboriginal, though. Of course, we know what they're talking about. Anyway, California Trout Inc., which focuses on keeping strongholds in wild trout waters intact and protected, and had numerous awards cut from DOI on Tuesday, previously affirmed DEI on its website, though it wiped the endorsement from its site in September of 2024. Well, too little, too late. In September of 24, California Trout made the intentional decision to temporarily remove our diversity, equity, and inclusion and justice statement. Temporarily? Well, that word temporarily just cost you millions of dollars. Originally drafted in 21, over the past 3 years, our organization has grown and evolved, deepening our understanding of what it means to meaningfully uphold these commitments. Let's see. Our decision to revisit the statement was not influenced by recent current federal actions on DEI, but rather our ongoing commitment to thoughtful, meaningful progress within our organization. Look, nobody buys that shit. All right. But anyway, there's just a little bit left there. Looks like they also cut awards for a few other environmental groups, including the Institute for Bird Populations, the Mid-Klamath Watershed Council, which primarily works to conserve wildlife and restore ecosystems, and we're receiving several DOI grants. And this will be linked in the description if you want to take a look at that article. Starts with, what is it, Daily Caller, right? Yeah, dailycaller.com. Because I know YouTube, they like to cut off. It's like, I don't know, like 20 characters or something of a link that I put in all my descriptions. Most of it's cut off because all these links, they're full links. So But if you look for Daily Caller, that's going to be the one down there in the description. So this comes from Secretary Doug Burgum. America's biggest existential threat isn't climate change. It's losing the AI arms race to China. And yeah, I think he's actually correct on that. That's why under the president and the Department of the Interior, they're working nonstop to expand electricity production nationwide. And all right, I get a 28-second break from speaking, so here we go.
We've heard
From
from the
Fox
climate
Business.
extremists for the past 20 years that the existential threat to the planet is 1 degree of climate change in the year 2100. President Trump, very clear-eyed, he understood the existential threat was Iran getting a nuclear weapon that they would use against us, and the other is losing the AI arms race to China. We're in a race on who can produce the most electricity. That's what the existential threat is, and President Trump wants to get us and our allies focused again on that process.
Yeah, it's
We've
not
heard for the
climate change. It's not climate change. Oh my God. No, it's not fucking climate change. By the year 2100, dude, they scare children to death, including my daughter, when they say that the state of Florida is going to be like, what, a third of the way underwater by the year 2100. It's fucking bullshit. It's not fucking real. It's fake. It's not true. Even 1,000 years from now, it's not going to be a third of the way underwater. It won't. It isn't. Look, I've lived really close to the beach, Indian Shores, which is a narrow beach in Pinellas County. I've lived right down the street from it for 20 years now. So I've been going there since 2005. And I've been watching because I was a little worried about it too, to be honest, because I moved here when I was 21 years old, fresh out of high school well, not really like 3 years out of high school, but whatever. Anyway, so moved here and had that in mind because that's what they taught me in high school too, that Florida is going to be underwater in like a century. So kind of paying attention over the years, and surprise, surprise, we haven't lost an inch of sand to the ocean yet. Not a fucking inch. And it's been 20 years. So they're full of shit. They're absolutely full of shit. I don't buy it. So anyway, whatever. I don't want to stay up on that soapbox. We'll just move on to the next thing here. So America First Policy Institute, only 30% of 8th graders can read proficiently. This is shocking. I don't know what it was when I was back in school, but I know for a fact it could not have been 30%. If I were just to throw out a random number without seeing this, I would have said, I don't know, maybe 80, 85% of 8th graders can read proficiently across the country on average. But right now it's only 30. 70% of our kids are being left behind. President Trump and Secretary Linda McMahon are cutting through the bureaucracy to restore freedom in education. School choice means no child is trapped in a failing school. Families, not Washington, set the pace. Faith, family, and freedom are the foundation for success. America's future depends on restoring excellence in education starting now. Look, there's a reason why a lot of kids who are homeschooled, they end up graduating when they're like, 14, 15 years old? Just because, man, people learn at different paces. And if you're homeschooling, you can cut away all that just bloated bullshit that you really don't need to learn in school, which is probably, I don't know, what percentage would you put on that of useless material that you learn in high school? Like 90% probably, something like that. I mean, yeah, some people, they might get more out of it than others, but I bet the majority of people, 9 out of 10 things that they learn in high school, they're not going to use in practical adult life. But anyway, here, this is the Secretary of Education here, Linda McMahon.
What the president really is saying is that he wants to take the bureaucracy out of education. And he wants to make sure that our children have equal access to an excellent education. He's a firm believer in school choice, that children should not be imprisoned, if you will, or held back because they're in schools,
Heavy
that
language,
aren't successful or aren't teaching them. And
look, dude, public education is just like communism if you really stop and think about it. Like, you have to stand in line everywhere you go, no matter what. You go where they tell you to go. You study what they tell you to study. You can only go to the bathroom when they allow you to go to the bathroom. You have to eat what they serve you, no matter what. I suppose you could bring your own lunch, but I mean, you know what I mean. It's very like communistic in a way.
And so restoring the freedom to education is so incredibly important, because I think we really have, kind of pushed our kids down. And when we look at what our nation's report card has shown since the president actually came into office, of, only 30% of 8th graders can read proficiently. Think about that. 30%. That means 70% cannot.
That's insane. That is absolutely insane. So arguably, probably even less than 30% of 8th graders could read a fucking newspaper. can adequately read a newspaper, because isn't a newspaper structured for about ninth grade level education with the words that they use on average? It's something like that. And plus, Secretary Kennedy just came out a couple of weeks ago and said that almost 80%, 79% of all children in the United States have a chronic condition, a chronic health condition, which means virtually 80% of children under 18 cannot join the military. They won't qualify because they don't have the health adequacy to do so. Insane, dude.
It's mostly the
This
same
country's
for
falling
math
apart,
as
isn't
well,
it?
and for fourth graders as well. We have failed our students in this country in their education. But not only have we failed them academically, I think, and part of
telling you,
what
man,
you were saying,
smartphones,
Jamie, we
social
have
media.
failed them in understanding the merits of family and that unity that
big time.
comes from a very, very strong family. And,
Very, very true.
You know, faith-based
That's gonna be
family
very
as
hard to
well.
fix.
So we have to restore, I think, how we think about our homes and our lives and our families. And it's just incredible to see how much difference that makes.
I don't think that's going to happen, man. I think the Believe All Women movement, the hashtag Me Too movement, that really just really threw a nasty wrench into how people couple with one another, and how men, not all men, probably not even most men, but there's a lot of men that are just like, they're throwing their hands up and like, fuck this. I'm just not even going to participate in this. I would love nothing more than to have a wife and a family, but it's just not worth it because just the statistics are stacked pretty heavily against me that whoever I marry, it's not going to last more than X amount of years. If we have kids, I'm not going to get to see them more than a couple times a month. You know what I mean? I could just keep going on and on and on. So with this, as far as the whole nuclear family thing goes, I don't even know how you fix that, because you're not going to force a lot of these modern progressive women to get their act together, even though they're miserable. Like 30% of all women in the United States are on some kind of psych med today, whether if it's antidepressant or anti-anxiety or whatever it might be. And to be fair, I don't have the number for men. It's probably not a very low number either. But still, how do you fix that problem? How do you get men and women to finally come together, get married, and stay married, first of all? And a lot of people, they claim that they're Christian, they're religious, but they don't practice it at all. They really don't. You know, you're supposed to take those vows very seriously. God hates divorce. I think that might be mentioned in the Bible. I don't know. I'm pretty sure it is, though. I don't know. Maybe in certain variations of the Bible, it might actually specifically say God hates divorce. I know that's brought up a lot in conversations with regard to marriage, relationships, things like that. So anyway, yeah, with regard to education, I know homeschooling, that really got a lot more popular during COVID. And if you're able to do so, homeschooling your kids would give your children a massive advantage, especially if you and your wife or you and your husband stay married at least until they're out of the house. Wait until they're in their 20s, then go off and do whatever the hell you want to do. Whatever the hell that you think that's waiting out there for you, which, trust me, it's not. But yeah, I mean, at least give your kids a fair chance, because if you split up, if you wreck your home and your kids have to grow up in a divorced household, they're 10 times more likely to become a criminal, to drop out of high school, to not pursue higher education, to not pursue the military, 10 times more likely to get addicted to drugs and a whole bunch of other just nasty possible outcomes. It just goes up by orders of magnitude if kids are raised in that situation. But anyway, so this is from Margot Martin. I absolutely love this. This was hilarious. So the Presidential Walk of Fame has arrived on the West Wing colonnade. Wait for it. And we're going to play this right here, and we'll take a look. Not sure if there's sound. I don't think there's sound, is there? No, there's not. But look, all right, so we got the president here. Moving up to the more recent, we got Bill Clinton, of course, HW, and then there's George W. Bush. There's Obama, and then there's President Trump. So Biden's coming up next, and then it's going to be hilarious because Biden's stupid face is sandwiched in between two images of Trump, which is really great. But, oh, wait, what's this? Auto pin. Auto pin. They're trolling Biden. Trump is the best troll president that we've ever had. So, yeah, they threw Biden's auto pin signature in there in place of his image, which I thought was hilarious. Not sure if they're going to keep it there. Wouldn't surprise me at all if they do keep that there, because it's hilarious. It's funny. It's called comedy, Democrats. It's called comedy, progressives. Be funny sometimes. Good grief, man. Don't be so quick to cancel everybody because, somebody might have said something offensive. All right. From U.S. Attorney Janine Pirro, you don't steal money from the federal government, especially when that money should be going to more deserving individuals. And she's responding to U.S. Attorney D.C.'s X account. For example, the CARES Act permitted certain nonprofit organizations to obtain PPP loans, but organizations organized under Section 501c4 of the Internal Revenue Code were never eligible for such loans. So this, if you remember back to the COVID era, where they were locking down all over the place and businesses were facing certain bankruptcy if they had to close their doors, especially small businesses, they could apply for a PPP loan. And if you met certain qualifications, the government may forgive that loan in the future, but that wasn't a guarantee. But you had to have a small business. And a lot of nonprofits did not meet that criteria to qualify for a PPP loan. So, and that's what this is in reference to. So similarly, Congress prohibited from second draw PPP loans those entities primarily engaged in political or lobbying activities, including those entities organized for research or for engaging in public policy advocacy or political strategy, or publicly referring to themselves as, quote, think tanks, end quote. The nonprofit organizations that entered settled agreements with our office were alleged to have falsely certified their eligibility for the PPP loans. And 6, so we've got 6 nonprofits agreed to pay over $3 million to resolve False Claims Act allegations involving Paycheck Protection Program loans, which again was during the COVID era. So I won't go through the article, but I will link it in the description if you want to check it out. It's from the U.S. Attorney's Office, and that'll be down there if you want to check that out, justice.gov. And we'll move down to the next thing here. General Chance Stoltzman, acquisitions and sustainment are war-fighting imperatives. On June 23rd, Guardians across acquisitions and operations united to deliver life-saving wins for the nation. This is real human impact happening every day across the Space Force. Let's check this out. Iran's Operation True Promise 2.
We saw a significant increase in missile activity to the tune of about 300 missiles in one day, and that was unheard of at the time.
That's a high volume. Typically,
that's a lot.
You might see anywhere between 6 and 20 missiles within a whole shift.
Since then, there's been about 2 or 3 major conflicts in the Middle East, and we are seeing loads and loads of missiles being shot at one time, or volleys.
Our adversary simply isn't slowing down, and we have to keep up. We have to maintain pace. And part of that is integrating a faster way to onboard new systems.
Systems Delta 84 is the missile warning, and we are closely aligned and essentially in step with Mission Delta 4, which is the missile warning from the operational side.
Previously, there was a divide, a gap in coverage between handoff of systems. The Mission Delta and System Delta constructs allows us to have continuous operator feedback, continuous interactions with our operator brothers and sisters.
We stood up Mission Delta 4 in the fall of 2024, but we truly became an integrated Mission Delta when we brought on the Deputy Commander of Mission Delta 4, who is also a System Program Director.
We could iterate quickly and bring tech insertions and capabilities on in a matter of days and weeks versus months and years, which has been typical of systems in the past.
When Iran launched multiple salvos into IUD air base, we had new capability, new technology that was in place.
In both U.S. allied partners, there are so many people at risk.
Yeah, dude, they launched a bunch of satellites for the Space Force. I think only in just last couple of months.
The actual call to evacuate. We left the building to the closest hardened shelter, which happened to be the security forces dorms.
You know, we've been planning everything down to the minute of the detail of who's going to drive, who's going to grab this bag, who's going to secure this door. You don't know how much time you're going to have, right, when that type of alarm goes off.
We really wanted to make sure that we got the warning out as soon as possible.
There's a lot of things that I have trained on my entire career that I was happy to finally be able to execute.
During the 12-day war, we actually did have some complications that were able to be solved pretty quickly due to, in my opinion, that integration of that acquisitions piece.
Closer integration between acquisitions and operations makes us all better.
Missile warning is all about
AI is still on the way
lives, too. Right, it's all about people.
It's incredibly rewarding to know that the work that we do directly contributed to saving lives on the ground.
Pretty wild, man, isn't it? So you got kind of a sneak peek into the inner workings of the Space Force. That was cool. That'd be cool, man, to be a part of the Space Force. That'd be pretty awesome. But yeah, man, they're I don't know if they're launching satellites exclusive to the Space Force, but I know because I go through these feeds every single day, and they actually launched quite a few satellites into space recently, just in the last couple of months for the military. Of course, they're not going to tell us exactly what they're being used for. They just say that they're, military related. All right. And this is from the U.S. Secret Service. The Secret Service dismantled a network of more than 300 SIM servers and 100,000 SIM cards in the New York area that were capable of crippling telecom systems and carrying out anonymous telephonic attacks, disrupting the threat before world leaders arrived for the UN General Assembly. Read more about this at secretservice.gov. And here's a few images here. I can't remember what those are called. I know what those are, but I forgot what they're called. Anyway, so assuming each one of these boxes is a SIM card, I'm assuming that is a lot, man. That is a lot of activity. Pretty wild. That is pretty wild. So U.S. Secret Service dismantles imminent telecommunications threat in New York tri-state area. Let's see. Okay, it's cool, man. We got a video on it here. Let's see if I make this big.
Hello.
You know what? Let me see if I can play this on YouTube. Might be able to get a better quality out of that.
My name is Matt McCool, and I'm the special agent in charge of the Secret Service New York Field Office. We are making this announcement as a matter of public interest given timing, amount, and concentration of material recovered during a recent Secret Service Protective Intelligence investigation. Following multiple telecommunications-related imminent threats directed towards senior U.S. government officials this spring, the U.S. Secret Service began a protective intelligence investigation to determine the extent and impact these threats could have on protective operations. This was a difficult and complex effort to identify the source of these fraudulent calls and the impact on the Secret Service protective mission. During this period, we leveraged technical assistance and support of federal partners, including Homeland Security Investigations, the Department of Justice, and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. We also received phenomenal support from our state and local law enforcement partners, to include the NYPD. The investigation led us to the New York tri-state area, where investigators discovered tens of thousands of co-located and networked cellular devices capable of carrying out nefarious telecommunications attacks. These devices allowed anonymous encrypted communications between potential threat actors and criminal enterprises, enabling criminal organizations to operate undetected. This network had the potential to disable cell phone towers and essentially shut down the cellular network in New York City.
Yeah, overloading the cell phone towers. I mean, if you immediately place a phone call with 100,000 devices in one location all at one time, of course it's going to overload the cell phone tower, which would render it unusable as long as all those connections are maintained on that tower.
These devices were concentrated within 35 miles of the global meeting of the United Nations General Assembly, now underway in New York City. Given the timing, location, and proximity, and potential for significant disruptions to the New York telecom system, we moved quickly to disrupt this.
You know, with the Secret Service being involved, it's almost as if they didn't want to hear what Trump had to say. Maybe this was all put up, which I don't know how much notice that Trump gave them that he was going to be making a speech. I first heard about it like a day or two before he went up there and gave his speech. But with all the sabotage that they had going on in the UN, trying to keep him from speaking, to the point where they cut his freaking microphone so the entire room of these world leaders or representatives of world leaders were unable to hear him, just kind of makes you wonder if they were trying to disrupt the cell phone towers that were around the UN too, so no calls could be made to or from during the time, just in case any kind of important communication was needed while the president was given, whatever information that he was given at the time.
Network. To be clear, these recovered devices no longer pose a threat to the New York tri-state area. We will continue working towards identifying those responsible and their intent.
Probably China.
Including whether their plan was to disrupt the UN General Assembly and communications of government and emergency personnel during the official visit of world leaders in and around New York City.
I mean, look, where the hell are you going to get 100,000 SIM cards from? I would assume that would probably throw up some red flags with the federal government because of what they could be used for. They could be used for things like this. I would assume they're probably made in China. I'm guessing that they probably make SIM cards over in China. That's why I threw out the name China. Maybe they are somehow involved with this.
Forensic
I don't know. What
examinations
do I
of
know?
the equivalent of 100,000 cell phones worth of data is underway. Early
That's a
analysis
lot.
indicates cellular communications between foreign actors and individuals that are known to federal law enforcement. Given the sensitivity and complexity of this investigation, we are not able to go into specifics at this time. This is an open and active
Yeah,
investigation, and we have no arrest to announce today. Rather, this announcement is designed to safeguard critical infrastructure and responsibly provide the public what we can at this time.
Well, somebody was renting
The
the
Secret
property.
Service will continue to run down all leads until we fully understand the intent of the operation and identify those responsible.
Well, they probably will. I would assume that they're probably going to get to the bottom of that. So I'll link that, of course, in the description. Absolutely wild, man. I didn't actually realize that it was, I mean, it does say in the description that it was, it had, like, they busted this operation right before the UN General Assembly, but I wouldn't have expected that it would have been, like, focused directly with the UN General Assembly that was taking place. But yeah, I mean, it apparently was. Anyway, so from the Department of Agriculture, welcome and congratulations to Dr. Ben Carson. Y'all remember Dr. Ben Carson? I remember him from the 2016 election season. He was running against Trump, and a bunch of others were, who was sworn in today as USDA's National Advisor for Nutrition, Health, and Housing. In his role, Dr. Carson will advise both the President and Secretary Rollins on policies related to nutrition, rural healthcare quality, and housing accessibility. And they have an article on that as well. Him getting sworn in. So, yeah, if you want to get some more information on that, that'll be in the description as well. And Rapid Response 47, of course, it's a quote with Secretary Wright, the Department of Energy, right? I think he's with the DOE. Yeah, 17th United States Secretary of Energy. Let's hear what he has to say.
Nuclear, at the turn of the century, was 6.5% of global energy. Today, it's about 5%. If we can reverse that trend, get it growing again, get it growing fast, it might be 10% of global energy in the year 2050. Energy systems move slowly. Wind, solar, and batteries, 2.6% of global energy. They're not going anywhere. They'll never get to double digits. So nuclear can be bigger. Fusions come.
Unless the left, unless the progressives and the commies, unless they see their vision to its bitter end, depopulation, getting the world down to under 100 million people. That's what I think everybody's end goal is.
Coming along, but these things will move slowly. The belief, think of the Biden administration. They wanted to stand in front of fossil fuel production in the United States. They did nothing to change the world dependence on hydrocarbons.
Nuclear,
they just drove up the prices.
Energy.
Good for the 1% in the industry, but bad for the other 100%. Talking about driving.
I mean, that's so frustrating, man. Like, nuclear energy is old at this point. It's been around for decades at this point, and once they get a nuclear facility set up and running, I mean, that thing will run for decades and decades. Just nonstop, 24/7, energy, energy, energy. You know, water turns into steam, turns the turbines, produces electricity. All right, so I got one more from Secretary of Energy Chris Wright. He brings the facts. Of course, it's a quote, so we'll just hear him out here.
Today we have 2 million people dying because they don't have clean cooking fuels in Africa and in South Asia. And the IPCC got 19 nations to pledge we will not lend for hydrocarbon development in the developing world. They don't want those people to get clean cooking stoves. It's so far off track.
Isn't that fucked up?
A credible group that's going to study climate change, it's a real issue. We should not ignore it. We should engage with it, but in a thoughtful way and evaluate trade-offs. But impoverishing poor people today, so we'll have a few hundredths or a tenth of a degree cooler world at the end of the century, to me is not just wrong economically, it's immoral. That today we have 2 million.
Yeah, man, pretty fucking wild, man. I mean, you're not going to hear any of this on the mainstream media, but you got it right here on the swamp, just like the Secret Service SIM card operation. Sure, you wouldn't hear any of that on the mainstream media either. It's all swamp content. Anyway, Caroline Leavitt, Eli Lilly to build $6.5 billion Texas facility to boost U.S. ingredient manufacturing. Quote, its U.S. investments come as President Trump ramps up tariffs on pharmaceuticals imported from other countries. See, it's almost as if tariffs are working. Who would have thought? And of course, Wall Street Journal, they're going to paywall me because, yeah, that's what they do. Damn it. But anyway, I'm not a WSJ subscriber. However, I will link it just in case you happen to be a subscriber. You can check it out. But that's the gist of it. You know, like, what else do we really need to know at this time? Eli Lilly, they're investing billions of dollars. I'm sure maybe in there they might describe the exact ingredients, which is probably a lot of long-worded mumbo-jumbo pharmaceutical speak. Anyway, it'll be there, though, if you want to check it out. And from Secretary Kennedy, yes, Maha wins. Oots brands. And the only Oots brand that I'm familiar with are the big, those big cheese ball tubs that you can buy. And during Halloween, during this time of year, they've got the pumpkin shaped ones, just full of cheese balls. They're delicious, but I'm sure they've got plenty of artificial food dyes in them because they're this neon orange color, probably glowing fucking black light. Anyway, Oots Brands plans to fully transition away from synthetic dyes by the end of 2027. I urge other food companies to follow their lead and join us to make America healthy again. Let's go. And from Congresswoman Yasmani Ansari, right? Congresswoman Yasmin Ansari. So she says Tylenol doesn't cause autism. Science has proven this, and we should always follow science. We shouldn't be following guidance from RFK Jr., who has absolutely no background in science or healthcare. And I did a check. She ain't a scientist either. She's not a scientist. She's not a doctor. Has no experience. I think I might have said, says a politician with absolutely zero medical or scientific background. And of course, there's other people that make that point too. And neither do you, loser. And you also have never worked a day in your life outside of government. So you have exactly zero idea of what the public feels and needs. Meanwhile, here's Johns Hopkins. And there are hundreds of studies and prominent voices that have been saying the same as them and Bobby for years. Taking Tylenol during pregnancy associated with elevated risks for autism and ADHD. This is way back in 2019. So this wasn't recent. This wasn't after the announcement that RFK Jr. Stated with regard to taking Tylenol while pregnant and that it could cause autism and ADHD. So there you go. And I have one more with regard to Tylenol. Check this out. Trump was right about everything. Well, what would that be? Oh, from Tylenol themselves. Take a look at this. We actually don't recommend using any of our products while pregnant. Thank you for taking the time to voice your concerns today. And look at the time, March 7th of 2017, forever ago. Seems so long ago, 2017, back in the good old days. Except for the whole Russia collusion bullshit that we never heard the end of. All right, so moving on to FBI. 9 hours ago, one of the many ways your FBI helps to keep kids safe is through our partnership with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, which is at NCMEC. Together, we combine our cutting-edge skills and resources into an unstoppable force to protect and rescue children from exploitation, abduction, and abuse. Report tips at tips.fbi.gov or report.cybertip.org. Let's take a quick look at this. I think this is the last thing I got. There you go, man. The FBI fighting the good fight, finding missing children. If you include adults, did you know that 2,000 Americans go missing every single day? Every day, 2,000 go missing every day, which a lot of them end up being found. That's the number of people who are reported missing, which of course, a lot of them, they just return home, family members that are worried sick. But there's a lot of kids that go missing every day too, and it's horrifying. But with regard to Kash Patel, he said that they have been able to locate almost 20,000 illegal immigrant children since he took over the FBI, which is absolutely amazing. So hopefully they keep finding more, because the Biden administration allowed, 400,000 to go missing that we still can't find to this day. Almost 500,000 children missing in the U.S., with a lot of powerful psychopaths out there. Like Epstein comes to mind, and it's a horrifying thought. So hopefully they'll find these children as soon as possible, and they'll be able to announce that hopefully in due time. But anyway, that's all I got for tonight. So if you enjoyed the video, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It would really mean a lot to me if you subscribe, and I will drop a new show every evening covering the swamp and everyone living in it, the politicians, bureaucrats, agencies, and everything else. The show is Monday through Friday. I think possibly today I may have had a little bit of microphone issues. I was doing a test before the show started. I didn't have time to get into it. I think it might have had like a little popping sound happening. I'm praying that it's not the case, but This weekend, I'm going to focus on trying to improve my microphone quality. I just got a new computer about a week ago, so I haven't had a chance to do that. But hopefully this weekend, I'll have even better microphone quality. At least I'm praying that I will. But anyway, I also post daily episodes over on X, so feel free to comment over there too if you'd like. And thank you very much for watching. Hope you have a great rest of your night, and God bless America.